Thanks for joining us. And today we're going to talk about how to meditate deeply in Kriya Yoga. So in chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, it talks about how the yogi meditates deeply. It says, when the yogi, like a tortoise withdrawing its limbs, can fully retire his senses from the objects of perception, his wisdom manifests steadiness. And further, in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, Patanjali talks about this deepening of meditation. He says, when the mental organs of senses and actions, indriyas, cease to be engaged with the corresponding objects in their mental realm and assimilate or turn back into the mind field from which they arose, this is called pratyahara and is the fifth step. And so this is the fifth step of a yogic process that begins with yama and niyama, the morals of do's and don'ts, the taking of asana, which is a stable posture for meditation, the use of pranayama, which usually is the form of intentional breathing that brings about the pratyahara, this internalization. This is really the turning of the senses inwards, so one starts to perceive their subtle inner nature. And certainly some yogis, such as Yogananda, have talked about this process of pratyahara. Yogananda writes, only those who have practiced these 5 steps can control the body and moods and habits, and exercise the ability to switch off the current from the 5 senses, so that the attention, which is ordinarily tied to sensory experiences, is freed through pratyahara to go within and meditate on God. So in this yogic approach, pratyahara, internalization, is facilitated through pranayama, a form of intentional breathing. Pranayama actually literally means life force control or restraint of prana, of the life force. And really this is facilitated through a form of intentional breathing. In the case of Kriya Yoga, it is Kriya Pranayama. And what Kriya Pranayama does is help to bring on pratyahara. And certainly in Yogananda's definition of pratyahara, he talks about turning off the 5 sense telephones, turning off the 5 senses. And this has been interpreted by some to mean that one's senses, the 5 senses, are shut off entirely and one is unable to experience anything coming from those senses. So for example, if one was sitting in meditation and started to hear something, the idea is then, under this interpretation, that one would not be in a state of pratyahara, one would not be internalized. If one could feel something, if a bug ran across one's hand, and one could feel that, that would mean that one was not internalized, that one had not experiencing pratyahara. Similarly, if one could taste anything, similarly, if one could see anything, and similarly, if one could smell anything. So this idea has crept into the Kriya Yoga community that pratyahara means a total, complete withdrawal from the senses. But is this how Kriya Yoga actually works? Are we actually turning off the senses themselves? Well, when we look at Kriya Yoga from a modern perspective, we realize that Kriya Yoga, as a form of intentional breathing, brings us into a low idle state. It brings us into pratyahara. And it does this by leveraging the body's parasympathetic nervous system. So we have a central nervous system, we have a sympathetic nervous system, which is our responses to everyday life. We also have a parasympathetic nervous system that brings us into a low idle state. We utilize it when we go to sleep, but the parasympathetic nervous system brings us into a low idle state, which is very conducive for meditation, which is why Kriya Pranayama is a very effective practice for inducing pratyahara. And the reason is because it actually activates or stimulates the dorsal vagal complex. And the dorsal vagal complex is part of the parasympathetic nervous system. It is a set of nerves that runs along the anterior part of the spine. When we do slow breathing, as in Kriya Pranayama, we activate that dorsal vagal complex. And what does it do? It actually helps to slow down our heart rate. And it does that because it sends a signal to the medulla oblongata in the brainstem, which is responsible for autonomic functions like heart rate. And it slows the heart rate down. So Kriya Pranayama, you're slowing down your breath rate. You're also slowing down your heart rate. And the body starts to go into a low idle state. One is still capable of perceiving information from the senses, but because the body is being subdued and brought into a low idle, the responses to those sensations is not as great, to the point where one may be completely non-identified with anything coming in through the senses at all. One is in such a deep meditation. That does not mean that one can't hear, for example, but what it means is that one may not react to what one is hearing. One disregards the information. So that internalization is this process that leverages the parasympathetic nervous system to bring us into a low idle state. So there are some Kriya yogis that have said that during meditation, deep Kriya meditation, where the sense of the body completely disappears, they can't feel it at all, and they'll feel this infinite vastness, that they can still hear things. And because of that, they think they're not in pratyahara. But in actual fact, they have gone through the pratyahara process already. And that's really the thing, is that pratyahara is not really a state of consciousness as it is a process of becoming internalized. So that's the first aspect of pratyahara, is bringing one into a low idle state. It's the internalization of the senses. But there's another aspect to pratyahara that most people don't ever think about, but often experience. And the second aspect is the attachment to the sense aggregates. In particular, we're talking about the 5 aggregates. These are aspects in which we perceive the world: form, feeling, perception, intention, and attention or consciousness. And what ends up happening when people use only the first aspect of pratyahara, only the aspect of tranquilizing the body and bringing it into a low idle state, is they may be sitting in a very calm, quiet state in meditation, but the restless mind is still active. It is still reacting to internal phenomena because there is attachment there. That attachment is towards those internal phenomena. It may be in the case of memory. It may be in the case of preoccupation. All of these kinds of things, these patterns, these preconditioned patterns that are based on previous choices made by one, start to muddy the water in one's meditation. So it is not as simple as turning off the sense telephones, if you will, tranquilizing the body and bringing it into a low idle state. One needs to abandon the attachment to internal sense phenomena. This is the major stumbling block that I've seen most Kriya yogis get to, and I certainly went through that myself until I realized that I had all these attachments, and once I learned how to let go of them, how to abandon those attachments, the meditation started to unfold naturally. And so one may be mentally attached to material form, to the body, to the greater world. One may have attachments as well to the feelings that one experiences. So if a feeling is pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, one may be attracted to a pleasant feeling, one may be repelled from an unpleasant feeling, one may be identified about a neutral feeling. As well, the perceptions, one may be attached to the perceptions of things, what things mean, how one cognizes a particular sensation. As well, one may be caught up in attachment to certain intentions that one has. And finally, the consciousness itself, one may be identified with a particular type of consciousness as it arises in response to internal phenomena. And so what can happen in meditation if one doesn't abandon these attachments is the hindrances can come up that actually prevent one from going into meditation or bring one out of a meditative state. And so these include sensual craving, aversion, restlessness and remorse, sloth and torpor, and doubt. And so these hindrances can manifest in meditation despite the fact that one is in a low idle state, which is a problem because it stops one from progressing in meditation. And often what Kriya yogis will do is try to concentrate so hard and become so absorbed that they end up pushing away all distractions and just be absolutely concentrated. But this does not lead to a deeper state of meditation. It really leads to a plateau in meditation where one is not able to go beyond. One can certainly not move beyond that absorbed state into a state of samadhi, of superconscious awareness. So in Kriya Yoga, instead of being concentrated and absorbed, one wants to have an open, spacious awareness that allows one to be aware of what is happening in one's meditation and also be aware of hindrances or distractions in meditation as they arise. And when one perceives those distractions arise that pull one away from the object of meditation, that one can abandon those distractions, that one can let them go, that one can release them, and then returning back to meditation. And this letting go of the attachments plus the tranquilization of the body through the whole process of engaging the parasympathetic nervous system allows one to very effortlessly flow into deeper meditative states, and those states to unfold naturally without one having to direct it. And especially if one is able to clearly perceive that the internal phenomena in meditation are impermanent, are ultimately unsatisfying, and are impersonal. If one sees the true nature, the three characteristics of internal phenomena, and learns how to let go of attachment, so what happens is the states of absorption start to manifest spontaneously without one needing to direct it. These are called the jhanas. And so initially in the first jhana, one will start to experience rapture and pleasure of the body born of seclusion, meaning the mind is no longer attracted to hindrances. One has let go of the hindrances. And these rapturous feelings and joyful feelings are in the body. And at the same time, the intentional thinking mind is still there directing the meditation. When one lets go and abandons the intentional thinking mind, one starts to move into the second jhana, which is the rapture and pleasure born of collectedness. The mind is collected and calm. From there, one continues to go into a deeper state of meditation, where the rapturous feelings in the body start to fade away, where one is entering a calm abiding. And that is the third jhana. And as one continues to abandon attachment, one goes further in meditation into the fourth jhana, where one moves beyond pleasure and pain, where the body starts to disappear entirely from one's awareness, where one's breath may become very subtle and turns into the tranquil breath. And as one continues to abandon attachment, what happens is one starts to move into the formless, the perceptions of the formless realm, which begins this whole round of different levels of samadhi. So if one has these two aspects of pratyahara, the tranquilization of the body through Kriya pranayama, and abandoning attachment, one will be able to go to the deepest levels of meditation and beyond. So if you have any questions about this video, feel free to send me an email at info@modernkriya.com. Also check our website at modernkriya.com and our YouTube channel. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.